All right, well, Happy New Year to everybody. The reason I say it's Happy New Year, because if you've been following things, the fiscal year ended September 30th, and last week was kind of a lull, but I do appreciate you all being on board here and being online with us. And I'm going to launch into things. I'm Dave Lowe. I'm the CEO of ISI Federal. And just real quick, some housekeeping type of items here. If you take a look on your right side, you have your audio mode. You have to be able to, you have to enter your audio pin right here in order, in order to be able to, for me to unmute you. Everybody's muted at the moment. So if you can also do a chat, send me a chat questions. We'll try to answer questions as we go along. We have a very full day today, so I'm going to get right into it and make sure we get things rolling. Just a little bit about ISI Federal, and this is a free webinar, so you will get some advertisements, some shameless plugs from me throughout the course of the day. We are located near Baltimore Washington International Airport, right smack in the middle of between Washington and Baltimore. A very important place to be for what we do as far as service offerings. Here's some of our clients that we have right here. We welcome aboard Allen Manufacturing, a one-stop translation, and I think there's another couple of them there. RPCI is relatively new, so I just want to welcome those folks on. And we'll be talking some about some specifics here with some of these clients and what has happened in the past in fiscal year end. So as we're moving forward, a little bit about us. We serve three primary clients. The first of all is the do-it-yourselfers. There's folks on this call that are just wondering what in the world is happening out in the federal space and how they can get attached to some of those federal dollars. We can help you market, we can help you plan, and we can train your people on how to do that. So that's one of the components that we do. We also have an assist type program where we augment your staff, either with people making phone calls and actually marketing to these people on a regular basis. The folks, we'll talk about those a little bit. Doing the grunt work, emails, phone calls, scheduling meetings, and that's one side of the assist model. The other side of the assist model is if you have somebody on staff that is going to be doing those things, and we have some of our clients that do this, and we actually provide a management role to be able to make sure that we're measuring right, we're going in the right direction, and we're getting the types of results that we're expecting to get before the dollars start to roll in, because it is a long-term type of business development process. And with that in mind, we do have a service where we handle all aspects of your federal sales. That means you're outsourcing the whole thing. We have a bolt-on solution for you to be able to sell into the federal market space, and that means feet on the street in Washington, D.C., and it's a we build it, you bank it, and if we're doing the whole thing, we do guarantee results, and we have a program. We'd love to talk with you about that if you're interested in that. It is the best way for you to be able to get penetration in the federal space if you don't have staff in order to be able to do it yourself. So that's a little bit about ISI Federal. Now, about this webinar series, we do it every second Tuesday of the month at 11 a.m. The idea is to work through some of the basic elements. We do dive into some more sophisticated components, but we really try to stay on the time of being able to make sure that you understand the fundamental components. We service clients that have a lot of work within the federal space. You notice some of those bigger boys obviously have some really good experience in the federal space from our client list. But we also work through the basic elements for you. The objective is to connect you with specialists and experts. I was hoping that we were going to have a contracting officer or two on the line today. I checked with the ones that were scheduled, and one had a meeting for a budgetary meeting that they couldn't get out of, and the other one is out sick. So we're going to be flying solo again here today, but I do have some insight from some of those folks for you. It's to provide a forum for the business leaders in the community. A lot of our clients and our contacts are local here in Maryland, but we have a lot of folks across the United States. And this is how to get to the federal money, and that is what it's all about right here today. So what can you expect about this particular webinar? You can expect to be fire hosed. This is going to be a deluge of information very quickly to get you up to speed as quickly as we can. We do not follow the pack, and you'll see exactly what we mean about that as we get further on into this webinar. If you've been on these before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we also provide straight talk. We'll tell you if it's time for you to get on or if it's time for you not to get into this business. Especially if you're looking for a quick hit, this is not a quick hit business. We recommend that you would take your money and go someplace else and invest it someplace else if you're looking for quick hits. And this is what we also promise is help where you need it, and that's not necessarily where you think you need it. In the federal work, we will be as straight as we can with you on what it is that you should be doing. As far as the help where you do need it, ISI Federal can help you target your market, position your company, leverage relationships, and whether you're doing it yourself or whether you need some help from us or you want to outsource the whole entire thing, that's the type of help that we can give you on a daily basis to help you penetrate the federal space. Today, we're going to be talking about, for an agenda, we're going to do a 2011 market recap. We're going to just a high-level kind of thing of what happened this year. We're going to talk about planning for 2012. We're going to talk about, because this is an important thing. Last year we experienced a very long continuing resolution. For those of you who were watching the news, you saw that the budget never got passed. It never got passed, and there's arguments and everything along the line, the political components. We're in for the same kind of ride this year because we have a federal election year, obviously, and it's going to be a steady dose of craziness with that. But we're also going to break down agencies. We're going to give you a specific example with USDA and how to find the primary decision makers within these agencies that are buying what you need and working with influence clusters. There's very few things that I can claim is my own concept. However, this is one of them as far as the influence clusters. We'll talk about small business initiatives and how you can move away from the rest of the pack so that you can be differentiated not only from what you do individually, but how these people buy so that you can be positioned to be able to capture some of this work, because I'm telling you, it's not going to be where you think it is if you're looking on FedBizOps or other public places. So we'll also give you a way to jumpstart your 2012 federal program with a Blitz campaign that we have, and we'll talk about that at the end of the program and how you can get involved. And this is the best time of year for you guys to be doing your business development. Not a lot of activity as far as contracts. That happened in September, but we're setting ourselves up for next September and the rest of 2012 right now. It is the best time to be doing that, and we'll talk about how you can, how the programs that we can help you implement to make that happen. Let's talk about the federal market real quick. Last year, give or take, the numbers are still coming in, $425 billion market, $2.5 million contracts. I want you to remember this number because it is very important for you to remember. 23% are set aside for small business or are supposed to be. And the feds buy everything that's out there in local, regional, national, even international marketplace for the federal market. There's 85,000 buyers with decision-making capability to buy services at any given time, and they are the #1 customer in the world. And that's why everybody is here today. We have dozens of people on. That's awesome to have you all here today. Even with that, 92% of the companies that try to get into this space fail, and we're going to talk about why that is. 80% that get their GSA schedule, and those of you who have ever done GSA schedules know that it takes a while to be able to do it. This is what happens. 50% of them don't get $1 on their GSA schedule. The other 30% don't reach the $25,000 minimum annually, and they lose their contract. There's other ways to lose contracts too, but this is the primary reason why folks lose their contract. And this also includes 8A, service-disabled, women-owned, veteran-owned, whatever you want to, whatever the checkbox is that you can imagine. Even those 5,000 and 9,000 8As don't get $1, and it takes sometimes over a year to be able to get your 8A status. money does not fall from the sky just because you have a GSA schedule or you have an 8A. And then after 8A, most of them graduate and they disappear. Now, for some, that's great because they made their dollars and they're on the beach drinking a Mai Tai. So, and for those of you who know, I was on vacation last week in Aruba, which was great. Had a great time with the family. So just to bring you up to speed with that. But here is what normally happens in there, and it is a train wreck for people that try to dip their foot into this space. The average cost is $55,000. So if you don't have the wherewithal to be able to plan, execute your plan, and have the staying power in order to be able to facilitate your expedition into the federal space, I would recommend just going to Vegas, take 50 grand, go to Vegas, stick it on red, and you, first of all, you save $5,000 right off the bat. You probably have more fun, and you have a better chance of winning because it is not easy to get into the federal space. And I'm not trying to scare you away. I'm trying to just set your expectations right that you have to have a long-term business development mindset in order to be able to play in the space. ISI Federal is all about removing the obstacle. All the things that you just saw, we want to help you remove those obstacles to federal sales by targeting, positioning your company, leveraging the relationships, and ultimately winning in this space. It can be done. It is done every single day, and we can help you do it. Let's just do a real quick year-end case study right here. Janus Associates, a relatively new client of ours. They came on board, did the intelligence in May. We'll be talking about some of the intelligence components of finding the right people. We imported those folks into our system, and we did an introductory blitz in July and August. This is pre-setting up for September. That is definitely late in the game. You want to start your marketing in April and May and June for next September because that's going to warm up your September. But as a result of this, we also did phone call follow-ups in August, face-to-face meetings in August and September, and September 28th, end of the month, we had a $58,000 win. So the interesting thing about that is we had to find a partner to do a GSA contract with because they needed a specific GSA contract, so we got them that. We have the opportunity, we won, and that's the most important thing. And it was very little competition, and we helped to define what happened in that particular procurement. And that's what's important is that we got our information in front of the folks. We laid out some of the parameters to help the contracting officer and the program manager understand what they were really looking for, and we captured the win. And not super huge, but again, short-term, September-oriented. This process works, and that's why we're here to help you as well. Right now, we're going to break down an agency. I was just talking with Kelly. She's a contracting officer for USDA. Also, as a result of these, again, this is in the IT world for Janus Associates. Here's what you need to do. You need to understand the agency structure, specifically how that agency is laid out and where these people lay, the people who make the call for your service offerings or your product offerings in the space. So that is key. We're going to talk about, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about how you can find who makes the call for your service offerings or your product offerings. It's very important. The other thing to do is understand the staff size because that helps to dictate how things work within their environment. The other thing, what's their total obligations? I like to look at last year's because that's a pretty good indicator of how much they have on their plate as far as total obligations. In fact, with the USDA, we'll take a look at that in 1 minute, and how they buy specifically what you sell. And this goes across the board, whether to do with GSA or SOUP or Alliance Small Business Contracts, 8A stars, looking for government-wide purchasing mechanisms. Whatever it is that makes it easy, that's how they buy, is how you can make it easy for them. And then how small businesses fit in with their organization. Very important to understand. That way, you can start to position your company right if they're actually buying on those. And we're going to break down USDA IT services. It funnels down from the CIO's office, no surprise right there. ITS supplies the support. They're based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Fort Collins, Colorado. They handle 85% of IT purchases nationwide. Let me go back here real quick. There's one item that's very important. $100 to $180 million $180 million in total obligations. Getting back to the question, what is their budget? I don't care about forecasts. They're worse than weathermen. What I want to know is what did they do last year, and because politically they want to maintain their turf. So if they're talking $100 to $180 million in obligations, this is one particular organization, specifically in IT support. This is what they spent, $100 to $180 million. And, oh, by the way, they are using SOUP, GSA, Alliance, Small Business Contracts, 8A stars, and they are always looking for other contract vehicles that make their life easier. And that's why we're funneling them the contract vehicles that we have. Janus Associates, one of our clients, we're funneling that to them so that they know specifically how to use that contract. Believe it or not, these folks don't necessarily even know about all the contracts that are out there. They just know what they're told that's out there. So what we do is we present those cases to them to make sure they understand. So the other thing that we want to know is what's hot that's happening with USDA. Let me tell you what's hot, especially in the IT space. Active Directory Consolidation Project. And what this is, it's all USDA, all their agencies. This is 3,500 field offices across the United States that are in the stages right now, just pre-planning stages of figuring out what's happening there, how it affects the data centers, and right now a 6-month pre-planning contract that has been awarded. So this is very early in the stages, folks. And what's important to know about this is that in that 6-month contract, that went to an existing contract, somebody that was already there, that had a vehicle that was there, that was easy for them to do, and it's only 6 months, and it goes back to a Microsoft partner that was already established in the space. So now what am I going to do now? Now that we know that we have this happening, and that part of what they're going to be needing in that space is going to be security components that Janus Associates provides. So when we're doing this, we want to make sure that we have the right people in line so that they know what we do, so that through the course of this, they can be thinking about us. So the first thing I do is I ask them, how often would you like me to touch base? In this instance, Kelly said to me, she said, yeah, absolutely, give me a call or touch base, once a month or so. So automatically, I'm going to do that. How often should you touch base? I asked her, what's your preferred way of communication? She said, I usually do email, but you happen to catch me on the phone because it's early. So what does that tell you? I called her early. I'm going to call her early again, not every time. I'm going to touch her with email. She said email is the best way to do it, so I will do that. I'm going to do exactly what she tells me to do. I'm going to do it every month, maybe a little bit more than a month. Make sure that she has the information on, if you have a line card or capability statement, we will be reviewing capability statements in the next couple months and giving you examples. There's examples on isifederal.com that you can download, and you can see how we do our capabilities and be able to provide you with some ways to lay those things out. But we're going to do exactly what she said. She said, hey, send me information on the new Army contract that we just won, $400 million IDIQ. That's a beautiful thing because she didn't know about that. And she said, hey, I want to know because that gives me the ability to be able to streamline my purchasing mechanisms, and it will never, ever, ever hit FedBizOps. I don't care what size it is. It doesn't have to hit FedBizOps if they use that particular contract vehicle, and they can purchase on it just like that. So do exactly what they say. In this instance, she said, hey, email me that information. I'm absolutely going to do that, and I'm going to do it once a month. And she told me exactly what to ask her. Ask me if you've heard about any security components that are coming out. What else do you want? You have somebody that's in a purchasing place for you in the federal space telling them exactly what to ask them and do what they say, and guess what? You are building relationships. She's out in Colorado. I'm here in Maryland. I'm still pursuing things in Colorado and New Mexico because that's where they're based. But we can build relationships. We can have great conversations. We can have the ability to be able to build relationships over the phone. She does it all the time. A little bit easier to get to, by the way. Some of these agencies that are not based in Washington, D.C., easier to work through because they don't get deluged with a bunch of phone calls. So there's the follow-up for USDA. The question is, how did we get here to the place where we're calling on the right people with the right message, finding out exactly how they do their purchasing? I'm going to tell you how we did it. We do it with a market-driven strategy. It's different than most people would expect because we're not following down one particular agency. We're looking for where the money is for our particular product and service offerings, and that's what we want to know. We want to know who's spending, what they're buying, how they're buying with their preferred vehicles, getting back to the regularity of when they do the purchases. We'll talk about that too. We just had a huge spike in September on most of those, and we do look for NAICS and PSC combinations because it gives them, if you're not familiar with NAICS codes are kind of the SIC industry codes of what it is that you sell and how it's compartmentalized within the government. Doesn't always follow that track. Very crazy. We can talk about that another time. But these combinations of how they list them is important. And when we do the intelligence, we look at those and we say, hey, there's a lot of buying happening in here for your particular services or products. So we want to make sure that we're not just monitoring your main NAICS code, we're monitoring across the other NAICS codes. And oh, by the way, we happen to know the people that did all the purchasing for these other NAICS codes and for your competitors. So let's go after some of those folks, make sure that we're getting what we want and we're hitting them the right way. So the market-driven strategy is all about who is spending that money. This revolves around what we call key decision clusters. There are 3 folks that are most important. Sometimes there's only 2, depending on the size of the requirement. And sometimes there's more because you have like a whole bunch of people that are involved in $100 million and billion-dollar procurements. But most of what we're after in the small business space, these are the people that matter the most. You have your project manager, program manager, you have a contracting officer, and you have your COTAR, or technical representative, contracting officer, technical representative. You also have end users in some instances, but primarily where we're going to be focusing our efforts is going to be around the 3. The project manager or program manager, these folks are responsible for driving down the administrator's initiatives. Some of these come right from the President of the United States, coming right down through. Some of the things that you see today, green is big, cloud computing, security, obviously. We still have terrorism threats and things like that. Security is a huge issue. IT security especially right now, and making sure things are secure because they're consolidating data centers and things like that into the cloud and making sure that those are things. And other big pieces, if you have anything that deals with cost cuttings or savings, this is the time to bring them to the table for the federal space. It's kind of a two-edged sword because when they save money on one side, they don't want to relinquish all the money. They want to be able to qualify their savings, but they also want to be able to keep their budgetary components because that's where their power is. So you got to position this properly if you're selling cost savings. There's other political ramifications that are revolving around that as well. Now, these folks are measured by different metrics. It depends on the agency, so try to figure this out. When you're talking, how do you get measured by success to these initiatives? And they're responsible for providing new ideas. Some of these, they're not bleeding edge ideas usually, but sometimes, depending on what's happening, they are looking for new and innovative ideas, and they are influenceable, which is very, very important, because if you're wondering where these people get their scope from, they get it from people like you and people like me. And if we have the ability to feed them the scope, then we have the ability to isolate and package ourselves and kind of differentiate ourselves from other folks. that are out there, our competitors. Now, contracting officers, on the other hand, they're busy, or at least think they are, and I will say that most of our contracting officers that we're dealing with, they are very, very busy people. And they're going to be more busy this year, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But they're busy. They will not teach you how to work with them. If you go to them and say, hey, can you tell me how this is going to work? They're going to say, I do not have time for you. They may be nice and say, look, you can go to Fed Biz Ops. You can talk to our small business office. I'm sure they're going to be able to help you out. And they'll set you aside. They will not teach you how to work with them. They are risk averse. They are not the type of people to be talking about the latest and greatest new edge technology. They are not about that. Their job, quite frankly, is to move paper from one side of the desk to the other. I'm not diminishing what they do. They know a lot about the contracting world, but they really don't care about what you do on a daily basis. You care, but they don't. Very important delineation. The question is, how can you make it easy for them? And the reason why this is important is because they select the purchasing mechanism. They may go out to a full and open RFP. They may have an initiative to do that. Or they could use a blanket purchase agreement that's associated with your GSA schedule. Or there could be an IDIQ that you're associated with that you could be able to ride on. They want their job of moving that paper to be easy and risk-free. If you can do that, if you can provide for them a vehicle that is low risk and easy, you are going to win. They are also responsible for developing contract requirements. This includes the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Requirements, and establishing the process for how things work. Very important also, as these things start to be bid, if you're responding to a bid, make sure that you understand what the requirements are on those bids, because some of those things are going to put you out by the scope. Because if you didn't bake the scope, I'm telling you, somebody else is baking the scope. It's probably your competitor. So you need to understand how that process is done and the evaluation process for that. They're looking for the fastest way to purchase, and they also administer the contract post-award. So after you win, you still have some contact with the contracting officers and the COTARs as well. Speaking of COTARs, these are the technical representatives. This is where the line between purchasing and the people on the side of understanding gets met. And in fact, these folks, while their authority comes from the contracting officer, they usually report to the PM. So if you're talking inside the organizations, you're talking about structurally, very important, understanding where they fall in the pecking order of the project management and where, if they're in charge of actually administering. They're also risk averse. They assist in assembling the technical requirements, and what we mean is they also are looking for what happens out there to meet the government standards. They're looking for similar purchases, also certifications that would be necessary. Very cool thing that you can do when you're presenting your information as far as your scope is concerned, isolating your certifications so that they know what's important. And this becomes part of the mandatory requirement. If you have certifications that you possess within your organization, they could be just associations that you're a member of that have a certification. Make sure you're driving that information to these people so that you can start to isolate yourself from the competitors. Here's how these decision clusters work. These folks are all over the place. There's more than 85,000. There's 85,000 COs, so you know that there's exponential amount of these other folks out there. So you have your project managers, your contracting officers, and your technical representatives. These people get together for specific purposes. And when they're dealing with a project that you fit in, you remember your PM is initiating and driving the scope. A lot of times for that, sometimes the contracting officer is collecting the information for the scope. The PM just says, hey, I need this. And we want to get the contracting officer says, hey, do you have a sample scope? As a matter of fact, we do. And we provide that for them. And this is where you can influence. But this is decision clusters. You have these 3 folks that get together for that. And these folks are all over the place. And they get assembled all the time. They're constantly moving, and they're constantly forming and constantly changing depending on the requirements that are needed in the organization. And each one of these can have a component for you. So where do we find these key targets within these? And this is getting back to the who's. And you'll notice that these folks exist within Department of Transportation and the sub-organizations within those. And then you'll start to see how these bubble up to the top. Some of these folks are dealing with multiple contracts for IT services. If this is the case, these become your primary targets because they're repeating business. And that's where we want to live. We want to get in line with the repeat business and make sure we start weeding out ourselves from the competitors. But these are the folks that wind up being there, and they're all over the place. And that's why we use a market-driven strategy, because they're in the Department of Transportation, State, Justice, Labor, Army, HHS, DHS, TSA, everybody that you want to go after. They have the purchases, and some of those smaller agencies, by the way, are so much better to get into because the big ones are locked up by the Northrops and the Lockheeds and the other guys. So we want to make sure that we're flying under the radar and establishing ourselves and getting traction, and we can actually get in and help you win business in some of these folks, with some of these folks. So they're everywhere. Out of the 80,000, who are the ones that buy what you sell? That becomes the question. Once you figure that out, if you figure out who is buying what you sell, then you can do the Kevin Bacon game or the 6 degrees of separation, and you can connect these dots together. Here's how we wind up doing it. This is a snapshot from the Excel spreadsheet that we provide for after we do our research, and it's all done specific to each individual client. We don't just take a whole bunch of stuff that's not out there for everybody to see, and our data is the cleanest that we can find because it's the most current. So we look at what are the agencies that are buying. So you have the Bureau of Public Debt, engraving, printing, whatever it happens to be. These are the agencies that are buying in the total value. Look at the dollar volumes on the right-hand side. 80 million, 21 million, 13 million, 10 million. Oh, every one of these is over $1 million. So each one of these agencies. Then we take a look at who is responsible for these within these agencies. Take a look. Lisa Gossett, $45 million. Lisa Wells, $32 million. Do you want to get to know these Lisa folks? Of course. So we want to know who is buying these things. And look at the budgetary numbers. These are specific for you, what it is that you sell. Carved out exactly those things. Some of these IT services, hundreds and hundreds of millions, billions of dollars being spent on IT services. But specifically, where do you fit in that category? Because you don't do everything IT, and you're never going to do everything IT. Where specifically? In this instance, in security or whatever it happens to be, this is where we live. So here are the key decision clusters. Know their roles. Know their objectives. Know their buying motives. Remember, contracting officers, their buying motive is, how can you help me move this piece of paper? Whereas your project manager is, oh, how can you make me comfortable that you know what you're talking about? And the COTARs as well. So Jenny to John and Phil and Laurie, they're all influenceable, feeding them the information for that. All right, we're going to dive into continuing resolutions in just a minute, but if I can go, I'm going to bounce out for just a second, and I'm going to look to see if we have any questions. If you have any questions, you can pop up your hand. Let me see. Hold on one second. Let me see what we got. No questions right there. Anybody got hand? If you want to, you can raise your hand. Candy, let me unmute you. Candy, you there?
Yes, I am. Excuse me.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, tell me about you, Candy. What's your company?
I'm with Medcare Products. We're a patient lift manufacturing company, so we're very specialized in who we go after.
Okay. So patient lifts, like medical patients?
Yeah, like the ceiling lifts or floor lifts that are in hospitals and long-term care facilities.
Wow. Somebody's got to do that.
Yeah, the VAs are.
So yeah, I would think that the VA and things like that. So what's your question?
Oh, did I have my hand up? I'm sorry, I was messing
Yeah, you
around on
had
my
your hand
computer.
up. So make one up quick. I'm only kidding. If you don't have a question, that's okay. But it's good that we know a little bit more about what you're doing for lifts and things. If you don't have a particular question, I know Barbara does, so I can pop to her.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Awesome. Hey, Barbara. Barbara Skelly, you there? I didn't know if you had a question. I just unmuted you. If you don't, we can pop to some others. There's Mark also. If you come on, Barbara, you're welcome to ask a question. Hey, Mark Smith, you there?
Yeah, do you unmuted me, Dave?
Is this Mark?
Can you hear me, Dave?
I can hear you.
Okay, yes, I'm on.
So, do you have a question or?
No, I didn't. If you showed me raising my hand, I did not. I was actually typing. I was on your website, actually.
All right. So, okay, that's fine too. I can move on. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand back up, and I'll pop you back in. And I'm looking to see. Let's see what we have. I'm going to mute you back, Mark. Let's see if we have any chat questions. How do we find these people? Great. I will absolutely get to that in just a minute, John. I will get that to you in just 1 minute. Before we do that, though, if we could, we'll dive down into how continuing resolutions work, because I think for 2012, this is going to be an important component. Last year, we ran through several months of continuing resolutions. They didn't pass the budget until February. So this is important to know as we're diving into this space. It is absolutely a great, great time to get into the federal marketplace right now because of this. And here's the reasons. Let's talk about USDA. USDA, their CR budgets were released last Thursday. So as we, hang on one sec, make sure I'm viewing this right. Okay. As they're working through this, continuing resolution means that they don't have any new budgetary dollars that are allocated, and there's going to be cuts in some form or fashion. We don't know what they are because they can't figure it out politically. But besides that, continuing resolutions means that we operate under the same budget as we did last year. So if there's $425 billion in budget, they operate under the same budget. The first thing that they do is they fund existing services. Any of the existing contracts that are there, that are already allocated and budgeted, they're funding those. Some of those just got passed last week, 2 weeks ago. They do a lot of sandbagging because they kind of keep their dollars tight, and that's why last March and April we saw a spike, a mini spike, not a September spike, because September things go crazy, and you'll see that in a minute. But they're sandbagging. There's no new requirements that are being released right now because of the fact they're funding existing services. And anything they're doing is going to be purchasing on existing vehicles. They're already established. If they can move some dollars around from one to another, even in this environment, if there's something that's important that pops up, it will get funded. If for instance, if they have a data breach, one of our clients does data breach remediation. So they're going to find the dollars because somebody's butt's on fire. In fact, there's a lot of butts on fire if they lose data. So what we look for is using our existing vehicles to say, hey, you can go right here, existing vehicles, fast, easy. You don't have to go out for everywhere. So what to expect in 2012. There'll be a lower spending in total dollars. Let's say they cut $20 billion or something. That would be insane if they did. They've never done such a thing. But if they did, let's say they do. So you have $25 billion. That would put us at about $400 billion. I think we can all survive on a little bit of that. There are restrictions by the continuing resolution, the budget cuts. There's election year positioning. You're going to see this on CNN, Fox News, whatever you watch. You're going to see that there's a whole lot of this going to be going on. Now, this is going to trickle down into anxiety for your contracting officers and the initiatives that are happening. But what we're seeing is we're seeing more smaller revenue projects. Instead of using a $5 billion IDIQ, which is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, by the way, you're going to see smaller projects, which is good for small business. And it's bad for procurement. And here's why it's bad. Because if they have to do, that means more work for them. So it's good for small business in some aspects, but it's bad for them in others because most small businesses don't know how to market effectively to get their information in front of these folks so to make it easy for them to procure. So if it's bad for them, smaller projects mean more manageable proposals and much better chance of winning. And we'll show you why that is in just a minute. It's amazing. And if procurement is overloaded, they go to who makes their life easier. Can you position yourself to be easier for them? I'm not talking about what you do for a living. I'm talking about can you position yourself to make it easy for them to procure your services or products? That's the most critical thing. If you can do that, you're going to win. So here's what we do. We develop a strategy around the market intelligence that we talked about, the people that are buying in the agencies that have the budget, and we define our approach by using competitive intelligence. So we look at what your competitors are doing. Are there people that are competing with you in the federal space? I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I don't know who they are. You might know, but then again, you might not know. So oftentimes we find competitors in the market that you had no idea were existing there because they've carved out a nice little niche and they never hit the radar screen. We have done research on major companies, whether it's, what do you call this? Armored cars. Armored cars was one that we did. We found a competitor they didn't even know. Number one buyer of armored car services in the federal government is not Loomis or Brinks. It's Triple Canopy. You can go look them up. Amazing story with them. Over $1 billion in sales, still small business. How does that happen? Another small business, almost $1 billion in produce. One customer, the Defense Commissary Agency. They don't even exist outside of the Defense Commissary Agency, yet they've sold nearly $1 billion with the Defense Commissary Agency in the past 6 years. That is unreal. So those are the types of things that we want to do. The other thing is very important to know is who they're buying from. If you know that your competitor has a really solid relationship with the Navy and you have an opportunity that pops out in the Navy, but your competitor is rock solid in there, you can make a decision of whether or not you want to try to win that, or you may just say, guess what? I know we can't win because it's baked for my competitor. I know that they have such an influence within this agency that we're not going to be able to win. And oh, by the way, the contracting officer that's listed on this particular procurement opportunity is the same one that is closely affiliated with my competitor. Winnable opportunities, that's what we're after. So how can you get there? The fact of the matter is people buy from people they like. It doesn't matter in the federal space. It doesn't matter in the private industry. It just happens a little bit differently. They have to cover themselves a little bit differently. But here's the solution. A relationship plus a need is a winnable opportunity. If you have a relationship with a contracting officer or program manager inside, you will have a very high probability of a winnable opportunity. Minimal competition means 50 to 90% of opportunities have less than 5 competitors. Can you live with 5 competitors? How many folks out there are thinking that every time that there's a federal opportunity, there's 30 or 40 competitors? If that is the case, I know where you're looking for your opportunities, and I know how you're monitoring for your opportunities, because that's where everybody is looking. But I'm telling you, in your industry, 50 to 95, and I would say even higher than 95% in some of those industries, are less than 5 competitors. That's where I want to live. That's where I want my clients to live. Because if they live there, if we live here, we can win. Let's take a look at one. ShowCall, event services company. $1.6 billion in event services. And there's a lot of cuts in event planning in the past. So this is not nearly, this is a couple years ago. But here we go. We'll look at 44,122 contracts, 97%, $1.5 billion out of $1.6 billion was less than 5 competitors. Now the whole reason that we're working with them is because they lost influence because exactly this happened. So if we take a look at this, 50 to 80% of opportunities have less than 5 competitors. How can you get in there? How can you be one of those folks? It's about positioning and understanding your federal buyer, and that's what we do. We can help you position and understand that federal buyer so that you can secure some of these dollars. These winnable opportunities, first, find the people that need to like you. Then help them like you by giving them what they need, not necessarily what your product offering is or your service offering. They need something else. They need security. They need to know that it's not a risky thing to be able to hire you. How do you do that? How do you position yourself that way? What if you don't have any federal experience? What if you don't have any past performance? How do you make it still look very appealing to them? We can help you do that as well. So what do contracting officers need? These are the folks that you're going to be after the most. They need political cover, they need technical cover, and they need pricing cover. Now when we talk about cover is you got to cover each individual person that's in those groups, all of the decision cluster people. So how do you give them political cover? That's your approach. If your approach is right, you can give them political cover. You may start a couple levels up and then come down on them gently. You don't want to, go into the Army talking to a general. General turns you on to somebody else and somebody else. We've had a lot of times where our clients have done that and have burned themselves because they came down on somebody too hard. Gentle. Your approach. Your technical cover. These are your capabilities. This is what sets you apart. This is how they can identify good quality providers and vendors of services. These are your capabilities. Your capability statement, critical to your approach. And then pricing cover. GSA, if you have one. If you don't, most of you can get GSA contracts. And I would recommend it because it tells them that you know what you're doing and you know how to work within them in the federal space. That doesn't mean that you don't have other contract vehicles, because as soon as you get a GSA, you're going to realize money's not going to fall from the sky, but that's okay because this approach will get you there. The biggest thing is making it easy for them to purchase, tie it up in a nice little bow, and hand it to them, because that is what's going to get you what the contracting officers need. If you're not doing what's easy, not just for you, but for them, you're not going to win. Easy is not what everybody else is doing. How many of you are familiar with the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization? These folks, they're great people. They're set up, and each agency has an OSDBU. And these folks are the folks that are there to help you connect you with potential business. However, they don't have any decision-making authority, and they don't have any influence on the scope process. It's challenging to work with OSDBUs. We have a way to be able to do it. If you know who you're after, you can do it. The other way is FedBizOps. How many of you, this is all free, by the way. This is why we call it the free way. This is all free. You can go to FedBizOps. FedBizOps has anywhere from 20 to 30,000 opportunities at any given time that are on FedBizOps. And there's, over the course of a year, anywhere from 65,000 to 70,000 opportunities that hit FedBizOps. I want you to remember that. And you could also do NAICS notifications. If you aren't, you should. You should definitely be getting fed NAICS notifications. However, it's not necessarily under the NAICS code that you would anticipate. There's reasons for that the contracting officer does these things. And we'll talk about that in another webinar. We can talk about that individually if you'd like. But essentially, this is what happens with FedBizOps. Full and open RFPs, lots of competitors, lots of bid responses. There's a lot of there's political exposure potentially because of the size of the operations. It takes months of work. The sales cycle for those is an average of 8.3 months. That's a long cycle. That's from the time that they have an identified procurement to the time that it's awarded. That is enormous as far as the sales cycle is concerned. How is it, going back here, Fed Biz Ops, 65, 70,000. Where is the 2 million? Everybody's going after this. Is this easy for the contracting officers? Is this profitable for you if everybody's going after the same exact work? No, it's not profitable, because if you have 30 competitors, there are no winners. Unless you have some kind of whiz-mo capabilities, there's no way for you to be able to be profitable, because you're going to either miss something in the bid or somebody's buying the work to stay in business. The enormous federal market, $425 billion, 2.5 million contracts. Remember we talked about Fed Biz Ops, 65 to go right there. Go to Fed Biz Ops. Look it up. You will see in the last 365 days there were I don't know what it is exactly, but between 60 and 70,000 items have hit Fed Biz Ops. Where are the rest of the $2.5 million contracts that were awarded in 2011? Where are they? They're other places. They don't hit Fed Biz Ops. They're already baked. They're already funneled through existing contract vehicles. They're already relationship-driven purchases. And that is why most companies fail. Because everybody's pointing to the Fed. We get pointed to Fed Biz Ops all the time if we're talking to somebody for the first time. Oh, you should go to Fed Biz Ops. Okay, thank you. I will. But we also know that that's where everybody and their mother is, and we don't need to do that. So this is where we get into the help where you need it. Know your market, plan, dedicate resources. You've got to do these things in order to be successful in any market. But in the federal space, you've got to do this. Know your federal market, plan for that market, and dedicate the resources to go after it. And if you're doing it yourself, that's fine. Make sure that your sales cycle, that you understand what you're getting yourself into. Make your plan according to something that's realistic, that's successful, not something that's going to fail. Because if you're going to fail at it, I'll tell you if you're going to fail at it. And I'll tell you, just don't do it. Don't do it. If you're going to do it and you have the resources, dedicate the resources. This is the recipe for success right here. And what we have is we have a way to get you successful in the federal space, and one is the capabilities review. We'll take a look at what you do. This is the easiest way to get us engaged. It's cheap. The intelligence, not expensive either, regularly $3,000, $2,500, and this is your plan for your market. It's 80% of it anyway. It's the right people and the right agencies and your competitors' contacts. Very important to understand this in the market. Then we talk about the year-end or the New Year Blitz. Regularly $16.99. We'll do it for $13.99. We're reaching the right people, introductions, emails, follow-ups, exactly what you need right now. The New Year Blitz is such a great tool. Not a lot of sales happening, but great business development opportunities. These are the people that we were talking about earlier. These are the folks that are spending the money, leveraging your relationships. And this is the other thing. You will get kicked over to the small business liaisons or the OSDBUs. You will know exactly who you are going to talk to before the meeting. If you're doing the speed dating things, know who you're after so that you can ask them, hey, can you connect me to these 3 people? We do it all the time. Have your capabilities, ask them to schedule meetings for you, current contacts, who you know within the list that you get. And who do you know that knows somebody that you need to know? Some of these folks are going to be, so if you're taking this to your small business people, make sure that you give them all the information they need. And this is where you're going to find it, in the agencies. And let the market determine for you your agency targets. Don't target an agency specifically. Let the market determine your agency. And chances are you're going to be able to find the people in your market from this intelligence that have an incredible value. They're going to be the DMs, the decision makers, or they're going to know the decision makers. Very close knit. They do have budget. They do have the ability to be able to operate. Now, we also talked about the right time. We are now in October. Notice the spike in September every year. Every year in just about every industry. Every once in a while there's a quirky one, and we can find out about yours. But these happen once every year. So all your planning should be around what happens in next September. Right now, plan for next September. I know that sounds crazy for a lot of entrepreneurs, but if you're getting into this space and you don't have a 2-year long window, I'm telling you, do something else. This is the way to operate and be successful in the federal space. Give yourself enough time to be able to develop traction in this space. Right now, best time to be able to develop relationships and start to feed people with the scopes. We're doing it every single day. We're providing this information. Take a look at this. It looks like the heartbeat of the federal government spending. Thump, 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 right there, September. Every year, we're bouncing right back down in October, November, December. There's still contracts going on, but a lot of those contracts are existing vehicles. That's happening in continuing resolution. Happens every year. Nothing different. But the spending that's happening now is already existing contract vehicles, so that you're not going to be able to win a whole lot of new business. Now, from October to December, best months in development, best time to strategize on and plan for 2012, and that's what we're doing today. Again, best value for you, $39.50 to get you traction in the space, get you jump started this time of year. The right people, well, I'll deal with that. Okay. We're running out of time here. There's some additional resources for isifederal.com. You can review our limit process, as well as you can download a free handbook for selling to the government. There's also a survey there and feeds from government sites. If you'd like to link in, love to. Send me an invite. And now we're going to open it back up for questions. Let me see real quick. Hang on a second. I will pull this. Get this out so I can actually read this. I'm sorry. Will the webinar be viewable at a later date, some portions of the sessions we missed? Yes, Angela. We will. I'm recording this and we'll post this on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing for the pieces that you missed. PSC, Barbara asked the question, what does PSC stand for? Product Service Code. Sometimes it's FSC, and I don't remember what the F stands for on the pre-side, but the Product Service Code is a delineation on, let me see if I can open this up real quick. Give me 1 second, and I'll see if I can find this for you, and I'll give you an example. Sorry, guys. I should have had this opened up before, but now that you asked that question, and you can ask some more questions while I'm looking this up. This is for a particular client. So we'll see what we can find here. Okay, this is for RPCI. These folks, these are battery folks, industrial batteries. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down and we're going to take a look at the NAICS codes. You'll see, let's see, there's your NAICS codes here. The number of contracts are 1. Some of these are odd. But then we're talking about PSCs. You have two different, so your NAICS code is kind of your industry code, but then this can float between your NAICS codes. So underneath of batteries, you could also have, let's go back up to your, hold on 1 second. I got to move this to the other side so I can see here. Hold on 1 second. Let me go back up to the NAICS codes. Hold on. Here we go. Here's a breakdown for NAICS for batteries. You have primary battery manufacturing. You can see that here, right? So there's a NAICS code for battery manufacturing. So there's 7,867 contracts that were awarded for that. But you also see other miscellaneous electrical equipment and component manufacturing. So within these contracts, and this is a 99, by the way, your next code that end in 90 and 99, they're usually others. So batteries are getting thrown in wherever. And this is why it's so important to get the intelligence information, because you don't know where your services or product offerings are being located and sold within the government. But take a look at the dollar value here, $1.1 billion. So there's a lot of batteries. We're going to scroll down here. Hope you're not giving you a headache. Anyway, then we see where these contracts are. 7,000 are under batteries non-rechargeable. Then 5,800 batteries rechargeable. Then some of those are falling under electrical hardware and supplies. So you can see where these fit, right? You can see that we're in the right place in the intelligence component, and these are the numbers, these are the dollar volumes. $285 million, $45 million, 40, 87, 44. These are batteries, folks. So if you're wondering whether or not the federal government buys what you sell, I'm telling you, there's places. And the more niche-oriented you are, especially when we're talking about patient lifts and ceiling lifts and things like that, finding out where those things are, very important for you. And looking at how your competitors are operating as well. So this is the PSC. So these float underneath of your NAICS codes. So hopefully that gave you kind of an answer to that for that situation.